Of all the social justice issues we talk about on What She Said, there is perhaps none more misunderstood than that of human trafficking. Tamara Cherry is an award-winning journalist, victim advocate, and founder of Pickup Communications, a public relations firm that specializes in supporting victims and survivors of traumatic events. She is the first civilian recipient of the Peel Regional Police Chief's Certificate for her groundbreaking reporting on human trafficking, and has lectured widely on the topic of human trafficking for lawyers, police officers, and nonprofit organizations. Until 2019, she was the crime specialist for CTV News Toronto and has reported on crime for the Toronto Sun and Toronto Star newspapers. Inspired by her years of reporting, she has released a new fiction novel that is a crash course on the domestic sex trafficking of girls and women in Canada called All the Bumpy Pebbles. Welcome to the show, Tamara.
Thank you.
So I guess my first question is, why did you decide to fictionalize this? I mean, you obviously know this in depth in a nonfiction way. So why make it a fiction novel?
So there's a couple reasons. One of them is that many years ago, I actually sat down with one of the survivors that I was working a lot with of human trafficking. And we started working on a book about her story because it was just, I mean, it was horrific. Her cases was also sort of one of the landmark human trafficking cases in Canada. But the process ended up being sort of a traumatic experience for her, reliving not only some of the stuff she went through as a victim of human trafficking, but some of the traumatizing things that happened in her life in the years leading up to that. So it got to a point that I said, you know what, let's step back from this. If at some point down the road you want to do this sort of thing, we can do that. But then I decided, you know, there needs to be another way that I can tell these stories of survivors without having to go that deep into their lives with them, but still make the average Canadian and really anybody in the world, because this is the same in a lot of countries, relate to what is happening to these girls and women. So what I did with All the Bumpy Pebbles was I decided to basically make a composite character for Roxanne, the protagonist, and her experiences represent, and the experiences of the other characters that she encounters in the book represent the experiences of so many different girls and women that I've interviewed as a journalist over the years, as well as stories that were told to me by those battling this problem on the front line. So people that work in shelters, some very compassionate police officers from different police forces across the GTA. And I wanted to create something that, like I said, people could relate to and could make them understand. Because as a journalist, one of the most common questions I was asked was, why didn't she just leave? She wasn't chained to a bed. How could she be duped into this world? And I wanted to put something together, something comprehensive that could answer those questions, that somebody could sit down and read and say, oh, now I get it. And it doesn't just focus on one story, because every survivor I've ever spoken to, while there are certainly a lot of common themes when it comes to things like the rules that their traffickers give them, a lot of them are the same. All of their stories are so unique. So I wanted to try to get something that was broad enough to cover a lot of those stories, to check a lot of the boxes, and just give people a general understanding of how this happens and why it's important, an important issue for us to pay attention to.
So, for anybody listening right now, I think a lot of us automatically think, oh, human trafficking, that's overseas. What would you tell people in Canada who are listening, especially mothers, because, I have a lot of mothers that listen. What would you say to them to pay attention for in their own home?
I would say pay attention if your daughters are becoming withdrawn, if they're on social media and you don't know who they're talking to. I think it's always important for you to know what different relationships your daughters are in. I think it's also very important for parents, not just mothers, but mothers and fathers, to model what healthy relationships are. So you might not have a healthy relationship in your own home, for example, but I think it's important to have conversations with young girls and women about what healthy relationships should look like. So if a man is telling you that you need to prove your love to him by, for example, dancing naked in front of other men, that's not love. If a man is telling you that to reach your dream together, you need to sell your body or do something that you're not comfortable with, that's not love. So we need to be teaching our young girls. I think this needs to be taught, at the ages of 12, 13, 14 in an age appropriate way, what healthy relationships look like, and their own self-worth. Something I noticed a lot in a lot of the survivors that I spoke with was, some of them came from broken homes. Many of them had suffered abuse as children. But they all needed something. There was some void that needed to be filled. So either they felt like they needed to be loved. It's not to say they didn't have anybody at home that loved them. They felt like they needed clothing. They wanted the new, nice clothes. They needed shelter. A lot of these habitual runaways are at a high risk of being trafficked. So I think open and honest conversations with your kids is very important, knowing who they're talking to, and asking questions in delicate ways, maybe.
Okay, wonderful. So if people want to find your book, then where can they find that, and where can they find you online?
So my book is available in all of the usual ebook places: Kindle, Kobo, Apple Books, you name it. If you want to buy it in paperback, you can do so through Amazon. Just search All the Bumpy Pebbles or my name, Tamara Cherry. Where am I online? I'm on Facebook, Tamara Cherry, Twitter @Tamara Cherry, Instagram @Tamara K Cherry. I've just sort of gotten back into the social media as I start to engage with people about this book. And I'm always happy to hear feedback and engage in conversations about this topic.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much for joining me today, Tamara.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about this.